Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Jeffords, and today I will be presenting my research on the treatment of women within the Surrealist landscape through an exploration of Paul Delvaux's Phases of the Moon from 1939. Before we jump in, I want to introduce Paul Delvaux himself. Paul Delvaux was a Belgian artist born in 1897 on the 23rd of September. He began his career in art in 1960 by studying architecture at the Belgian Royal Academy of Art. By 1920, his primary focus shifted to painting. Delvaux felt most drawn to the works of the Post-Impressionists and the Expressionists as he felt a great anxiety in the lead-up to World War I. His first solo exhibition was put on in 1925 in a style reminiscent of the influences of Post-Impressionists and Expressionists. After this, and with his discovery of Surrealist artists, Delvaux's artistic aesthetic switched to the Surrealist style. A huge influence for Delvaux was his fellow Belgian Surrealist René Magritte, who he had the pleasure of exhibiting his work beside of in 1936. With his career still flourishing in 1965, he was named the director of the Belgian Royal Academy of Arts, a position he held for 1 year. Following two major retrospectives of his work, one in Tokyo, he passed away in 1994 at the age of 96. The focus of my research is Paul Delvaux's Faces of the Moon, finished in 1936. It is oil paint on canvas, and this work is currently within the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. This work first caught my eye in the chapter on Surrealism from the Hunter, Jacobus, and Wheeler textbook, Modern Art. This composition was developed by Delvaux as a dreamscape, where the subconscious tries to come to an understanding with the pressures and changes of modernism. This painting is dominated by the three figures in the forefront, though the entire composition is a frenzy of actions and objects. The two suited figures in the front are meant to represent educated men in the new age of technology. The right male figure stares out in an almost dazed confrontation with the viewer, giving out vibes of accusation and amusement simultaneously. The male figure on the left appears to use a machine to better his view of the objects around him. With his eyeglasses pushed to his forehead, his gaze through the machine aligns with the female figure to the far right of the forefront. She is seated on a patio of a structure reminiscent of some type of ancient architectural style. Behind her are objects of the modern age, such as the lamp and the globe. The woman herself is naked, except for the bow across her chest, literally presenting her as a gift to the male gaze. She appears frozen in time, posed in a manner of the nudes of the old masters. The form and position of her body reads statuesque, though the inclusion of pubic hair naturalizes her. The middle ground of the composition is strewn with broken objects, and it cannot be differentiated between what object is machine or which is just marble. A male figure dressed only in trousers plays a flute, and behind him follows a line of Rubenesque nude females. The background features a landscape of mountains and valley untouched by modernity. There is a lot to unpack in this surrealist scene, rife with sexual tension. The mood of the scene can best be typified as one of frustration. Here we see the frustration of existing almost between modernity and the not too far unindustrialized past. There is sexual frustration as the men appear to be able to look but not touch. The male figure in the middle ground is representative of Delvaux himself, which is interesting as here he acts as a Pied Piper, but we can't quite figure out where he's leading them to. It seems to be because they are naked that they're being led into sexual submission. The treatment of the women figures are typical to the many works of Delvaux as objects of voyeurism, submission, and to be lauded only as sexual objects. This treatment is typical of not only Delvaux, but many of his surrealist contemporaries as well. Pictured here are said surrealist contemporaries: René Magritte, who I mentioned earlier, Giorgio di Chirico, and Max Ernst. All were also huge influences of Delvaux that have a questionable use of the female figure within their compositions. Here we have one of the most recognizable works by Giorgio di Chirico entitled The Uncertainty of the Poet, done in 1913 and currently a part of the Tate collection. Within this surrealist landscape, the female figure does not have a head or limbs, and therefore no agency. The figure is contorted to be reminiscent of the marble nudes favored by the Greeks and the Romans. This female torso is meant to represent stability in a landscape where the passing train and the ripening bananas are representative of the perishable nature of life. If the female torso, with no agency, stands in for stability, it is curious that this is the stable state Chirico sees women in, and seemingly wishes for them to remain in. Here's a work by artist Max Ernst called The Wavering Woman. Completed in 1923, here is a woman who Ernst described as a fashion victim of the machine age. She thought she was walking down a catwalk, but is being held captive by a machine that pulls her into the abyss. The woman is terrified as the machine seizes her and blinds her with one of its limbs, its limbs seeming to appear out of nothing and nowhere. She is powerless against this process. Though Ernst would say she is meant to symbolize how war holds humanity hostage, it is interesting that a woman is the first helpless victim of a machine that also corrupts her. This has something to say about how men felt about women becoming more independent in the modern age, as they now became the sources of moral corruption within our society. The final work by a contemporary I would like to show is The Menaced Assassin, done by René Magritte in 1927. This work also currently belongs to the MoMA collection. In this composition, Magritte presents a murder mystery inspired by the film and book series Fantomas. Magritte takes the liberty to turn the scene from the book into a surrealist nightmare, and included subject matter that wasn't in the original story, including the menaced assassin. The only figure in this scene that is female is the nude murder victim, lying on a daybed with stabs to her throat. She is meant to be the stabbed mannequin of the story, and in Magritte's mind he brought her back to life by her cries replaying on the phonograph of the male figure in the middle front of the composition. The cries turn the mannequin into a real victim, a real woman, and a real victim of violence. After viewing the works of Delvaux's influential artistic contemporaries, it is no surprise why Delvaux chose to depict the women of the phases of the moon as he did, as he was following in a standard established well before him. The female figures within these four surrealist paintings are consistently objectified, victimized, and exploited. Works by Delvaux, throughout the span of his career, remained focused on the surrealist conceptions of women, continuing to create dreamscapes where the women are not only idealized, but willing sexual partners, ready to engage in the fantasies of every male viewer. Women Trees is a 1937 work by Delvaux. In a landscape juxtaposed with modernity in the rural past, there are 4 female figures that are tree trunks from the waist down and nude from the waist up. With bosoms heaving, they are active figures grounded only by their roots. Here the women are stuck in the past, at their core remaining one through the earth, though when one looks closely to the background they can see the hints of modernity throughout, including the modern man who's suited and is progressing in the landscape behind them. While he progresses, they remain stagnant. It's interesting to see. Entry into the City, done by Delvaux, is very reminiscent of Women Trees, though the women here have the good fortune of legs. Featuring another landscape with modern suited men walking beside sexualized mythological women, here we can also see women engaged in homosexual acts in the background, and every female figure is presented as nude, while again, the male figures appear all to be modern men. Even the figure in the leftmost corner, he seems to be in a state of undress from engaging with the women. My conclusions drawn from my research thus far show that there is a standard treatment of the female figure by surrealist artists, and that treatment is grounded into the continual objectification of women in society and art. These artists try to instill the women of their own sexual fantasies onto these canvases, which exposes how they value women for beauty and gratification far more than as human beings. Thank you.